All right, I made it through the entire list of interesting questions we have today. Good job.
I'm geeking out. I'm geeking out over that Tascam. I don't think I've ever seen a live engineer use a Tascam board.
Yeah, that's
so
interesting.
It'll be interesting to see. I'll definitely put it on my schedule to watch at NAMM.
Mike's question above that, I'm trying to figure out how to read that.
I'm trying to see if I can get my distributor to hand me a Tascam Sonic View console demo. I don't know if I'm going to have any luck with that, but I'd like to get my hands on it.
Well, the best part about with me is I'm 15 minutes away from full compass. And once they get that in, they'll probably have a day where you can walk in and play with it. So if I don't get a chance to play with it at NAMM, I'll be able to do that there.
One of the interesting things about those trade shows is just to see where the energy is, what booths have drawn crowds, and what people are interested in. It's hard to do without boots on the ground.
And Liberty, did you get your levels all sorted out?
Yes, I'm good this week.
Excellent. Excellent. I have to say, Liberty, from last week, so your guest referred to me with a term that I didn't know, and then I told my wife, and she thought it was really funny. She's like, "What?"
Looks like my Stellar X2 arrives tomorrow.
Whoa. Evidently, that's the new mic, right? Everyone's slowly organizing around Courtney's mic. It's a nice mic. I like it. Stellar's going to be like, why are suddenly all these people buying our mic?
Yeah.
It's a huge spike. Where is that coming from?
It's called the office hours effect.
Yeah,
Yep,
exactly.
the OH effect.
Bob Hiles going, why did no?
Yeah, exactly.
Why did
What
sales
happened?
suddenly drop?
Sales just fell off a cliff.
Good show, everyone.
Greetings and welcome to Office Hours. If you are new here and you want to learn a little bit more about what we do, head over to officehours.global. Our first hour, we answer your questions on media and digital productions of all kinds. And our second hour is typically something that we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today we'll be speaking with product specialist Kevin O'Connell from Descript, the editing tool, AI generated, and he will also be doing a tutorial with us. So you want to stay tuned for the second hour. And producers, go ahead and get your questions in early. And speaking of questions, let's jump into them.
Our first one, Liberty, comes from Douglas Carmichael. And Douglas asked, what are some useful tools for checking a final mix to make sure it translates to multiple listening environments?
Jeffrey?
My favorite tool is simply a notepad. And basically what I'll do is if I'm here and I'm editing, I will listen to the song completely. And if I find an anomaly, something, I hear something, I will write down that time mark. And then if I move to the car and listen on the car, I'll do the exact same thing. I will not stop and go back and hear it again, because the reason why is because I want to come back here and listen to it and find that specific thing and hear what I hear what I heard in the car, what I heard on the AirPods, what I heard on the the cheap $20 headphones that I listen through, things like that. That way I don't get distracted by one anomaly. I keep listening so I can hear the rest. And then I've got all those marks on a notepad. So if a week from now I come back to that same piece of music, I can double check to see if I still hear that stuff.
And Alexander?
Yeah, I come at this from both a hardware and a software angle. From a software perspective, SonarWorks makes a suite of really great plugins, not only for calibrating the headphones that you check your mixes on, but also for calibrating your near-field studio monitors. You can also emulate other types of speakers and other types of headphones. So from a software perspective, that's always very, very useful. Always check your mix in mono, make sure it translates properly, because unfortunately a lot of people these days tend to listen in mono with these little pillbox types of speakers. I always like to have at least one set of my main reference studio monitors, and then also another set of smaller speakers to check the mix on and see if it translates there as well. Avantone makes a product called the Mix Cubes, which are basically designed to help you check your mix on speakers that are typically bass challenged, like the types of cheap speakers that are in a car, that sort of thing. And then always have a really good set of headphones to check the mix on. Then of course you can always check your mix on other speakers as well, like just put it in your car and see how it sounds there.
And Alex?
Yeah, I will argue that until you've heard it in the environment that you hear it in, you don't know what it'll sound like. So you have to listen to it in multiple different environments. You can try to simulate it, but in general, what you want to do is, if you're going to play it in a theater, you need to hear it in a theater. If you're going to play it in a car, you want to listen to it in the car. If you want to listen to the pillbox, you want to listen to it through a pillbox, but you really have to listen to it in those environments. And you have to be careful that they're not too clean. One of the problems that they had, is, I was at least told a story that at Lucasfilm, they had a problem in the Stag Theater where they were listening to mixes that it was so clean that there was a lot of things that got lost in translation when it went out to an actual theater. So they had to kind of figure out ways to simulate bad theaters, so that they understood what it was going to sound like when it wasn't reproduced at the same level, and making sure that it still carried over.
Next question.
Gus Libby in Satellite Beach, Florida says, I know you've covered this, but could we get a list of do's and don'ts for a local 4-piece band playing in a local movie theater? We'll be recording the show, but not live streaming.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
There's still a little bit of unknown here. Like, for instance, we'll talk about is this going to be for a show? Is there going to be a film behind you? Are you going to have an audience in there, or is this going to be for a music video? Is there a stage on the theater, or are you going from a hard floor, like a concrete floor? Because now what you have to deal with is there's always that pitch that's going up on a movie theater, and you always have to fight to that. Because I always try to go and get that sound to get at least to the middle, where I would call the sweet spot is the middle of the room, middle height, and everything like that. Playing on the stage, if you're not playing a film behind you and there's curtains that can be drawn, draw those curtains. If you're playing in the center of the stage as opposed to the corner of the stage, if there's some sort of performance going on in the middle, you have to be concerned on that. Is there a pit? And if you're not playing in a pit, sometimes those pits become resonance, and you might have to deal with a lot of extra boominess from this open area that's just collecting sound as you're going. So those are some of the factors that I would bring in there, and some of the do's and don'ts that I could extrapolate from that.
Go ahead, Bill.
Jeffrey had a good list. The other thing I would check, and this one might seem a little counterintuitive. You think I'm in a commercial movie space, there should be no problem with power. But depending on the theater, that power may be mostly into the projection room, and the regular outlets may be just in not very powerful 15-watt circuits. And if you plug a bunch of amplification in there, you may have power issues. So I would check power, I would check the audio profile of the room, and also just make sure today in the modern era, there's usually not anybody in a theater who really understands their technical specs that well. So I would go in very early and do a very substantial tech check to see what you actually are going to be working with. Don't make assumptions that you're going to have plenty of power and things like that just because it's a commercial building.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, guys. How many different web controllers are possible using one companion interface?
Jeffrey?
Oh, wow. Sky's the limit. 32 buttons for one companion instance. You can extend that to even more. If you're talking on one computer, you're only dealing with the resources from that single computer. But if you're talking multiple machines and multiple pieces of hardware that do accept a companion from that, then you could set up page upon page upon page. It's just about trying to find the right page to get to control that.
Next question.
Richard, looks like Bowman in Defiance, Ohio, says, how do we protect those with mental illness from hallucinating chatbots? And he has a reference there, and the reference says something about a man ending his life after an AI chatbot encouraged him to sacrifice himself to stop climate change, I suppose.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Keep them away from computers. It's not just chatbots that are the problem. There's a million people with quack opinions and trying to sell books on ancient aliens and miracle cures and all that stuff on almost every social media platform. There is a way on the chatbot, if people tend to take them, the veracity, take them for the truth, there's adjustments. This is the Bing chatbot. You can click on the little B in the corner of the Edge browser, and you can adjust its precision here of its response. It can go creative, balanced, or precise. And you set those settings there, and then its answers will be limited to, if you set it to precise, its answers will be based on a different large language model that is more moderated and checked for accuracy. Creative lets it, lets its freak flag flow, and it gets more creative and out-of-the-box thinking, and balanced is kind of a combination of the two. So by setting by choosing the precision of your answers in the chatbot, and I think probably ChatGPT-4 has a way to adjust its precision and accuracy as well by now. You can adjust its answers and make sure that you try and keep it on the accurate side.
Jeffrey?
I think the only thing that you can do is create awareness, and because it's always going to happen. I mean, in the 70s, even with like teletype machines, or I remember in the 80s it was about D&D. There was message boards in the 90s. There was it just seems to find a way to creep in. So being aware of somebody's what they're doing and how they're communicating back and forth. I've been playing with Vana, VANA, which basically made AI versions of your face. They went into the chat bot about a few weeks ago, and the specific chat bot where they learn from what you say and what you do to create a chat bot of yourself, so you can actually be talking to yourself back and forth. So these are things that, if handled right, you can have a lot of fun, but they could definitely take you down the wrong rabbit hole. So being very aware of who is doing this and what they're doing, and communicating them, keeping them grounded in the real world is probably the best way to do that, and make sure that they're talking to somebody, a professional, and hopefully resolving their issues.
John?
According to this article, Eliza is based on ChatGPT-J, which I have experience with, and it's an open source version of Transformer, ChatGPT. And the model was built by Stability.ai, which are the leaders in the open source community, with very little guardrails on this source code. And so OpenAI spending a lot of time about guardrails, and tangentially, hallucination is the word that OpenAI uses when they go off the guardrails. And this is OpenAI's main focus now, is to provide guide rails for this sort of thing not happening.
Go ahead, Alex.
You can go to almost any time in the last 10,000 years and find examples of people doing crazy things because socially they thought it was a good idea. There's no new tale to tell here. You're going to see edge cases. They're going to show up on the news. But people have been crazy since there were people.
And Bill.
And to follow on to Alex's point, not even just crazy. I remember the stories in Orson Welles' War of the Worlds back in the 1950s when people actually got in a little bit late and believed there were Martians, and there were people in the Midwest and other places, I'm not targeting them, who went out in their fields with shotguns ready to meet the Martians that were coming. It's not that it's irrational. It's just that you get yourself in a mental mindset where you believe something, and good art can be pretty believable. And then if you don't have some context, it's easy to take action against things that are fantasy.
And it's good to have this conversation going back to what Jeffrey said, because these are some of the seemingly outlier things that will cause people to be concerned. And it's definitely an issue of concern, but how it impacts technology and the growth. Alex?
I mean, humans aren't very good at math. So what happens is we'll see news things about a person or about a handful of people, and we'll make a decision that this is a systematic problem when it may not be. So I think that it's important to understand, okay, how many people are actually doing that? Not if there's lots of examples of one person doing something that is a huge anomaly from the norm, or even a handful of people, or even thousands of people. But in the grand scheme of things, we have to kind of keep track of it. There are things that we don't pay attention to. Corn syrup is probably more dangerous than most things in our life. High fructose corn syrup it kills a lot of people, but we don't think about it much. We just keep on putting it in our cereal.
Next question.
Alexander Knight in Vancouver, BC. Has anyone noticed the problem with Jon Stewart looks excessively dark in Dolby Vision? My Vizio TV has been calibrated as per rtings.com, and I watch in a dark room. No issues with other HDR content.
Alexander?
Yeah, I just wanted to make an addendum since I posted this question, because I put on the Tetris movie on Apple TV Plus, and I also noticed that was dark too. But I don't have this issue with Blu-ray, with 4K UHD Blu-rays. So I'm not sure if it's the Apple TV entirely so far, or if it's just the stuff on Apple TV Plus and the way they distribute that stuff.
Jason?
My Sony TV has Dolby Vision Bright and Dolby Vision Dark. As far as the problem is concerned, I think it's just a dark set. I think that's actually the set design. I think it's designed to basically exclude the audience entirely. And that ends up with a bit of a dark feel, but no, I think that's very much by design.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so I looked at the footage. I haven't actually watched the show very much, but I did pop it up on an HDR screen to take a look at it before the show. And what I will tell you, as someone who's done a lot of HDR, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think that what they're doing is they're using a full gamut. So they're basically, what I mean by that is that they are actually using HDR for what it's built for. I don't see highlights that are overexposed. I don't see blacks that are being crushed. What I see is them allowing the frame to do what it does. I mean, the problem you get into in most cases is that if you're talking about SDR, which is what we're used to, you have a very tiny 100-nit range to work with. So the blacks never really get that black, and the whites never really get that white. It just is it's an in-between kind of mud. So when you go to HDR, you have a lot more range and a lot more detail, and if you don't want to start crushing that down. Now, what a lot of people do when they try to make it work for SDR and HDR is they kind of ruin the HDR. They move the curve around so that you don't actually get to see all those details and see all those bits and pieces. They just bring everything up because people will complain. And what Apple's doing, I think, is allowing the shot to be what it is, and allowing it to be. Now, I think that there are a couple of things that they're doing that are a little bit more challenging. One is, you'll notice that a lot of people, at least when I watched it, a lot of people have white collars. One of the things that we do really quickly with politicians and people being interviewed is when we send them recommendations, we say, please don't wear a white shirt. Please don't. There are three color shirts that we recommend against. One is white, one is black, and the other is red, because red doesn't compress well in H.264. So those are the three big colors that we try to get people to not wear. Red is usually not very hard to get them to stop wearing, but black and white are harder, and white especially for politicians. And we really try to push towards a blue or a gray, especially if they have a darker complexion, because it really makes an HDR signal very difficult to execute well. So I think that's part of what you're seeing there. They're also using windows, outdoor windows. It can make everybody inside feel a little darker because there's a lot of exposure, and they are definitely carefully protecting that HDR. So one of the things what I noticed there is I saw that they're not blowing anything out in the HDR, which is definitely going to make everything feel a little bit darker if you're not used to looking at that. But it's just because I would say that what you're seeing there is a true HDR signal, not one that's been kind of poured through a lukewarm filter to make SDR work as well.
And Jeffrey.
That's a lot of great information right there from Alex. I'm going to add, well, first of all, I watch everything on a 70-inch Vizio TV myself. I don't have any problems watching Jon Stewart on that, but I will say that if you have the captions turned on, that can definitely affect in a lot of HDR sets. Like, for instance, Severance. I cannot watch Severance with captions on, because what happens is all that white background all of a sudden it just dims down every time a new caption shows up and then comes back, and it gets very annoying. So if you have captions, I'd turn them off.
Next question.
Zach Phillips is up next from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Okay, so you don't have $15,000 for an FR7. You have $3,000. You need to create the most cinematic image you can with a pan tilt zoom. 24 frames per second, same amount of shallow depth of field. What do you buy? Used equipment is fine, by the way.
Go ahead, Noah.
I feel like I'm filling out like a Scantron or something, back in school for this. For me, I'll try to address the question, then I'll wax on it a little bit too. So obviously we're aiming for a full frame sensor of some sort, right? We're trying to fit within the $3,000 budget. So I'm going with the classic Sony FS5, which is a camera I've been using for years. The A7 series is also great, and the FX3 is also a great camera as well, all within the Sony frame. RS2 is a gimbal from DJI. It's one generation older, but it's still like $600-700. So you can get that. You can use a phone to control that wirelessly, and so you'll be able to have a little bit of that pan tilt control. In this case, if you're wanting something more cinematic, I'm leaning more towards a prime lens rather than a cheaper servo-based lens, right? And that will give you that shallow depth of field. You have a lower f-stop, all that kind of fun thing. Another kind of tangent you can go down is looking up middle things. On YouTube, they have a way to control the RS2 via an ATEM setup. So the disadvantage of this setup is it's going to be clunky. It's going to be extra work to balance that gimbal every time. So I kind of want to double back and wax on the question a little bit of, it sounds like, and I don't know you personally, Zach, but that when you think of the FR7, you're like, I can never achieve this. It's this big, expensive camera. You said 15 grand, it's actually 10. And if you get it used, you can get it for about 8,500. So I would kind of double back to that and just think about, how you're approaching this problem. Is it an investment? Is it a camera that you could be using and booking and earning money from in the long term? And then that price will be less intimidating if you think of it in that way.
Alex?
And I would say probably FX30, which is what I'm using right here, plus a RS2, which I haven't right over here that I haven't gotten installed. So that's going to get you under $1,000 and be able to do that. The only niggling part is what your lens is going to look like. So the lens that I have on this is a little bit more expensive. So you may go over your $3,000 with a lens on top of that. Now, the other thing to look at is the Sony 6400, I think, which is about $800. And then that would give you a little bit more headroom for the lens and for the RS2. The other thing to look at is possibly a data video PTZ head. It's about $2,100. It might put you over it, but that, it's something that we're considering with, how do we... I'm with you. I'm with you, Zach. I'm really excited about the FR7. I have resigned myself to renting FR7s from Noah, so I don't have the FR7s. So I rent Noah's FR7s, and I'm sticking with the smaller FX30s and smaller cameras. But I am looking for PTCs, so I'm going to be testing. You'll see me testing over the next week the RS2, but I'm also looking at things like the data video to build kind of a PTC head.
And thank you for your questions so far. This is the time when we say we've got more time in the show. So go ahead and submit those questions and prepare for our second hour as well. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. What are good habits around using technology to reduce stress? How do you know when you have too much tech, and how do you keep from over-equipping yourself and getting too much screen time?
Nigel.
Yeah, I'm not sure about too much tech. I don't know whether that's such a thing, but I can tell you one of the things I always tell people to do is beware of your email. So email generally is full of, and social media as well, I suspect, negative or bad things. Whenever I look at my work email, it's normally a list of things that have gone wrong or need fixing. So I try and pass a rule that says I try not to do it first thing in the morning, and I try not to do it last thing at night, and really try and limit the last hour and the first hour of my day away from the pain. I think the other thing is, if you find yourself in front of iDevices or other devices like that, I would encourage you to put the redshift on and take some of the blue light out before bedtime.
Courtney?
I use technology a lot of times to relieve stress. I find that with your smart speakers like the A-Lady and the Google Home, you can have it play soothing sounds. I like a distant thunderstorm, which is great. We don't get too many of those in California. You guys down in the Tornado Alley probably would shy away from that. But it's soothing, it's relaxing, and I find when I've got too much screen time, my eyes are having trouble focusing, I just get up and go for a walk. I don't take any technology with me. I'll take my cell phone just in my pocket for emergencies, but I won't be listening to anything. I won't be on social media. I'm never on social media anyway, but I just go for a walk, focused on the horizon, let your eyes relax and not look at anything close. And go for a walk and let your mind sort things out. And you find that that's a way to, especially if you're trying to tackle problems, even technical problems, getting away from the technology helps your brain sort it out and find solutions to your technical problems by stepping away from them.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, the step away thing can be a big deal. In fact, I was going to say that my solution to this is developing better friendships with smarter people. And the reason I say that, I got really stressed the last couple of days. I'm on big deadlines with a lot of narration stuff that I have to do. And I had run into a problem in setting up the voice booth. I have a new computer there. And so I've been trying to get Final Cut working on it. And I was running into this stopper. And I know a lot of people in the Final Cut community. I realized this was an audio problem, though. So I called our friend Mickey and I arranged a little time to talk to him. And could I have solved that problem? Probably. I mean, I've been around Macs for a long time, but having somebody to reach out to talk it over with, he and I, particularly him, he came up with the solution in the first 5 minutes, and it solved the problem. So rather than going back to a stressful situation, having to keep working on it and keep working on it and keep working on it, reaching out to somebody with better expertise in a particular area just took all the stress away, and I was able to get it solved, get back to things today. And I think having friendships in the tech community and with people like we've met here on Office Hours makes all the difference. When you have mission critical work and you must get your tech right, that team of people, the soft friendships you have behind here is just mission critical.
So many good gems. Noah?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers there, and there's a lot of layers in this question too. I think for me, I have to balance my time between being right here where we're at right now in this space, and then my workshop in my backyard, building stuff and working on things. So I'm the kind of person who loves working with my hands, but there's only so much of that I could do without wearing out my body, and there's only so much time I can spend in here staring at the screens working here. So I have to kind of balance between the two. I'm also, like Nigel, someone who figures out the blue glasses thing, or a shading thing, so there's more reds in your screen at night. I think the glasses even take that one step further, which is super helpful too. I also like to work on or do things other than work sometimes too on the computer. So I'll play video games, or I'll try to do something that is less productive, but it's more working on myself. But I'm also trying to exercise, trying to do that regularly, and then get out in the sun, get some vitamin D. That's always helpful. But at the end of the day, I think my wife is the one who tells me when I'm spending too much time on my computer.
Always helpful. Jason?
A lot of great advice here. I think this comes back to the best way to block a punch is to not be there. In this case, what that means to me is to remember just how much control we have over these devices. They work for us. They work for electricity. They don't work for our satisfaction and enjoyment if we're not making them. So turn off the notifications that you don't need. You have a tremendous amount of control in that, just even your iPhone. I don't use focuses, but I've had clients who have had tremendous luck with that. If you can switch a focus that'll basically give you insanely important notifications only, that can clear a whole lot of space in your head.
Last year, I did this social media project called Project 50. And so it was 50 days where you had to do specific things where, for example, the first hour of your day, not like having a morning routine and not looking at your phone and reading. And that really helped me to structure and help I'll say some with my screen time so that I leave my mobile device outside of the bedroom, like not even having it in the room, because that's temptation of rolling over in the middle of the night and looking at, checking notifications or checking things like that. So that's been tremendously helpful. Also within that was working out an hour a day. So again, making sure that I'm getting outside and I'm moving, or if I am working out, I'm typically listening to something rather than looking at the screen. And it can be a challenge because so much of what we do is on the screen, but as has been shared is the taking breaks and getting outside and doing something different. So I've been doing more cooking now as well. So that like adding different elements into my day outside of the screen has been tremendously helpful. Next question.
Gavin Roberts in Chester, maybe Pennsylvania. Guys, does anyone know of a way to trigger banner and skyscraper adverts on a live stream for advertisers that auto-rotate every 6 to 7 minutes? Would this need to be done via a macro in vMix, or is there a simpler way?
Jeffrey?
I think in vMix, yes. What I normally do is I use my Stream Deck and Companion. Both of them have the ability to set up triggers to your vMix, whether it be on the machine or the remote. The problem that you run into, there's two big problems, and one is sync. So you start talking about something, and all of a sudden a banner shows up, and it's in the wrong place or it's in the right place at the wrong time, and then all of a sudden it becomes a problem. Then you're fighting that, and then that just puts your brain into a different realm. And then the other thing is I don't like to do. I put a lot of work using my vMix, but there's a limit, and you don't want to overstress the computer because you're doing 100 different things at once. And that's why usually, like for instance, my Stream Deck is usually on a different computer and it's remoting into the vMix instance. So a lot of things can be done on a secondary computer and work from there. And I've also gotten away from doing a lot of automation, and I've been playing with a couple weeks ago, we talked about it was an app called On Time. It's a stage timer, and I have that on another computer, and then I can plan out what happens when, and then I can make the triggers from there. I can do a little bit of automation, but once again, if anything happens, even if the banners stop working halfway through, you've put on a new stress because you're not expecting this to happen. And then all of a sudden it happens, and that can just completely derail a show.
Next question.
Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York asks, is there a relay system that allows a stage manager to signal to the audio engineer for streaming, not for in-stage view, exactly what mic is going to be used before the talent uses it? A web interface controller, perhaps, or an iPad interface?
Jason?
Sure. There are a number of tally systems that can do this, and you can just get creative with their placement. The one that comes to mind for me is angryaudio.com. Take a look at the Studio Signal Light. It's a stack of different colors that could be placed in some way out of view and could be used for exactly this.
And Alex?
Most of the time, there's not a studio. The stage manager is not doing this. It's an A2. So there's usually someone working with the A1. So in most events, we have, if we're managing mics, we have an A1 and we have an A2. The stage manager is worried about moving people around, making sure that people are queued. The A2 is the person who is on comms with the A1, telling them what's happening next. And usually they've put a name on it. They've put an order on it. If they know who's coming out, and they're saying, I'm on mic 1, or I'm handing them mic 2, or confirming that it's mic 8, whatever that is. And so if you're managing mics on a stage, you should have an A2. It's too much to ask for the stage manager to try to manage all of those things. What you end up with is kind of an unfocused stage manager, which doesn't usually produce a great show.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California, on the panel today. Do you have experience with line arrays? I've seen a new speaker, the Persona CDL12P, pop up in my research and was curious as to whether it's any good.
Alexander?
Yeah, this is really interesting. I mean, I have mixed on line arrays, and I actually just did an install with a line array system. I didn't know the PreSonus actually made speakers, so it's a pretty interesting design. They claim fully symmetrical design. It's got 12 2-inch drivers right down the middle with a 12-inch woofer directly behind it, so that you should get that symmetrical dispersion, which is really, really important. It's got Dante built in, which is really neat, and it looks like full speaker management DSP, so you get compression limiting. It's got parametric EQ, so you can EQ your monitors. Looks like a really great system. Is it any good? I don't know. It specs well. It looks good, so it'd be something I would have to try.
Next question.
Alexander Knight, Vancouver, British Columbia. Tascam has announced a new Dante-enabled digital stage box with 32-bit analog to digital converters and a sample rates up to 96 kilohertz. Looks like a well-spec'd product. It should work with any Dante-enabled mixer. And he's got a link there.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, it looks like a really great box. They said they created this because they have their Tascam Sonic View the 24 XP, which is a $7,000 mixer, and it should connect up to that. Will connect up to computers or anything like that. So you can buy it on its own. It's not out yet, but I'm expecting to see it. I will be at NAMM in a couple weeks, so I am going to be stopping by Tascam and see what other great little features that they're adding, and I'll definitely we'll do a video on that and get that out to you guys.
And Alex.
Yeah, it looks like a great box. It'll be interesting to, once people get to actually test it and work with it, but it's great when it's available on Dante and not some kind of proprietary system to make that actually work. The price point seems to be about down the middle where a lot of those boxes are landing.
Next question.
Todd Rains in Allen, Texas. Myself and a group of other wood turners had a 2-night Zoom event with a charity auction. It worked reasonably well using H2R graphics and SocialStream.Ninja as a very low-cost solution. Are there any other low-cost charity auction solutions for use in Zoom?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I don't think that I haven't seen any other than the ones that you're listing there that have been available. But I think that there are some other. The question is where do you need that to occur? Do you want all of the auctioning to occur in Zoom? I think that really limits what you can do. I think a lot of people would open up Zoom and you could send them to a website at the same time and let them do it. Once you get onto a website, there are many options to make that absolutely work. So if you're happy with what you did, then keep it there. If you feel like you could have done a little bit more, think about using a web sidecar to make that actually work.
Next question.
Gavin Roberts in Chester says, guys, does anyone know of a way to trigger banner and skyscraper adverts on a live stream for advertisers that auto-rotate every 6 to 7 minutes? Would this need to be done via a macro in vMix, or is there a simpler way? Seems pretty similar to something we hit earlier.
Jason?
You already answered that one.
Yeah.
My way wouldn't be, I guess, simpler. I would use MIDI and a timer, and that would basically be it. It can just be programmed to wait and then do it again and randomize it and then do it again.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael again. SonarWorks Sound ID Reference seems to be a powerful tool for calibrating frequency response. Can it also remove the in-your-head feel of headphones without a virtual room simulation plugin like Waves NX? And he notes he uses NX all the time.
Alex?
Yeah, I guess what I would say is that a lot of these tools are useful to get to, as a crutch to kind of get through something, to figure things out. But the reality is the only way for you to know how it's going to sound in a room is to listen to it in a room. And there's just so many physics, so much physics. And I have to admit that I've had to work on projects where I'm working in very large spaces, small spaces, headphones, and it's very hard to really get a sense both from a calculation perspective as well as just an experiential perspective of what it sounds like in that room without the discrete speakers. So if I was on a train or I was at a hotel room and I'm just trying to get the mix close, then I may use some kind of simulation software. But outside of that, what I really think you need to do is that gets you close, but you just always have to know you're going to need to finish it in the area that you're going, in the listening space that you're planning to publish it. You need to finish it there, whether that's a near field, that's a small room, or a room, say 15 by 15, a large, a theater space or a headphone space. You got to finish it in those and preferably listen to all of them to know that it's actually working.
Next question.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California. Who's going to NAB? And how are the office hours coverage plans going?
Yes, looking forward to this, Alex.
Yeah, so the live view should show up today, the first one. We think that we may have as many as 3 live views for NAB. So I think we have a meeting later today talking about it. I believe that we have nearly 50 people working on the project, with 15, I think, on the ground. We plan to have a couple hours. So there's a couple different things that we're doing. One is that we are going to have some live, the same stuff we've done in the past, where there's some live streaming, there's a panel on the other side. We're discussing things with them, we're showing them things, and we may be jumping from, because we potentially have multiple live views. If we have all of that put together, and we'll know by next Monday, how many live views we have, because they'll hopefully all be in-house at that point. But what we'll be doing is jumping from basically from Central Hall to North Hall to West Hall, throughout a live stream, which would be kind of cool. The other thing that we're going to be doing is turning some of these live views on. These are LU800s. They're capable of 4K 60 HDR, streams, and 5.1. So we're going to turn them on at other times and cover the event. We're not going to try to do that in our panel view, but we are going to do that as a test of the whole system. So you'll see us turning those on and streaming out from these locations, which should be pretty exciting as well. But that'll be a different kind of coverage. And then we're also, a bunch of us are going to be covering some things. And if you're interested in that, if you have history of covering stuff or you want to look at those things, talk to us. But we're going to be shooting a lot of shorts, shooting a lot of VOD. We've got people ready to edit some of those on the other side. We're not going to put the VOD into the live streams. The live streams are going to be live. The VOD is going to be VOD, and those are going to go up into our channel. So we're going to hit it in a couple different ways, and then finally, there's going to be a room opened while the expo hall's going on. There's going to be a room open where people can folks on our team that are there can jump. Anybody at NAB that's in our group can jump into the after hours, raise their hand, and show people something they think is cool inside of after hours in a specific room. So I think that it will be it's potentially, if it works out remotely well, will be probably the most aggressive coverage of any conference in our space ever. And it's all built on the stuff we've learned from the past, from everything that everybody's done and, over the last little bit. We are trying to hit it from a bunch of different directions. We don't expect it all to work. But we are planning to experiment. We have so many people available. We want to experiment with all the bits and pieces and then we're going to calm down and look at there's a couple other conferences coming, like Cinegear, like and possibly some other ones that are nearer to us. And we may cover those and experiment with a couple other things. But I think we're starting to figure out how to really go crazy when it comes to coverage of a conference and make it. And really, it's a service to our members and to the rest of the world. These conferences are only serving 0.00001% of the world. And we're trying to crack them open a little bit so that everybody else gets to see a little bit as well.
Is this one of the largest? Like you said, 50, and I don't recall what some of the numbers have been in the past, but this sounds like
It's probably
really
the largest
large
one so far. Yeah. So it's and I think that it'll keep getting bigger. Like I think that it's, I don't think it's going to get smaller. I think not all of them will be this big, but I think that they'll keep on expanding because, I think that what we are really focused on, you'll notice that it's probably not as shiny as some of the ones we've done in the past. We are focused on making them more sustainable so that they're not a huge lift. They are still a lift. There's a lot of planning. We're meeting every week where there's a lot of people working on organization and process, but it's probably not quite as heavy a lift from a production perspective as the other ones because we're ramping up to be able to do one of these every month. So every 4 to 8 weeks, we want to be able to cover a different event, and so we don't want to turn any of them into it. We want to use the existing infrastructure as much as we can.
Right.
Of course, the HDR stuff is allowing us to stretch just a little bit, so we're going from there.
And if I could ask one more, because I find this all so fascinating. So you might have answered this before, but the intentionality of like, you've got the social element, you've got the live element, you've got the video on demand, but then even the after hours and the community, was that all intentional, or did someone say, hey, we should, make sure that we're...
The way we work, I would love to say that it was intentional and that we sat down and had a meeting and drew out a graph of how do we serve it. But what happened really was people came up with ideas like, what could we open up a window in after hours? So we really like to have something more informal that's sitting in after hours. And we realized that, shorts are a really good snackable way to just kind of, here's a bunch of little booths that are not necessarily something we want to spend 10 minutes on, but they're something that you might want to see. And so let's do some of those. But we have people that can edit. So let's do some 16:9 and maybe even a couple of the shorts with more work to make them look a little shinier and see what people do with them. Like, do people like that? Do people not like that? As we balance it, do we balance quantity over quality? Do we, there's all these things that we want to experiment with. So some of it's stuff that we've known in the past. Some of it has been based on, people have said, hey, I can provide this, I can provide that. So some of this is also coming from, who is coming and what they're bringing and what's available. And again, we've had some great support from, and all these things take time to build up because you have to start building a track record. So last year was people making a great example of what's there. Electrosonic is helping us with microphones, LiveView is helping us with the LiveViews. We have offers for other things that we're looking at as well. So there's been a lot of support from the industry as we kind of keep on building up. And if we do a great job or even do a good job, I think. I mean, NAB was our first try last year, and I was, I got a couple pings like this is some of the best footage coverage I'm seeing this year about NAB. So I think that we can turn that up a couple notches. And I think that we can, slowly build this over the next year, so 2 years of development, into probably some of the best coverage of these kinds of events in the world. And that, I think, provides a huge use to the rest of the industry. I think it provides a huge use to the rest of our members. So we're going to keep on, and it's a lot of fun. Like the goal is we are really working on having fun. Right? We're going to rent a house, so a couple people are going to hang out at that. It's going to be a flop house. And then we're going to have some get-togethers. I think we're planning a big dinner, and so it's going to be a good time.
So awesome. So awesome. And producers, we have space for a few more questions, so feel free to submit them. And John, you wanted to add something?
No, I just wanted to hear everything he was going to miss. Was that the deal?
Right?
Yeah.
pretty much.
Well,
pretty much. I mean, for me, it's a bit of FOMO for sure. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
If you have time, try to jump in the panel because we're there to, because we'll be conversing with you or whoever's on the panel there. But what we're hoping to do, and I don't think it'll happen on this one, but what we're really hoping to do is get to a point where you don't feel as much FOMO, that you feel like you're learning, that we're providing you what, a lot of the energy as well as the information that you might get out of NAB. It's not going to be the same as being there, but we think that there's a lot of people, again, 99.9999999% of the world that doesn't have the time, money, passports, visas, all the things that are required to go to these conferences. And so we're trying to make them more accessible to everyone.
And Noah?
Yeah, no, I was going to say too. So, I mean, I was heavily involved in the beginning of, when we were pioneering this and trying to figure out how this was going to work. So it's really fun to see the iterations continue, with the other shows and what we're doing now. And the FOMO from the content side, but also the FOMO on the production side of wanting to be involved, but knowing at the same time, like there's other projects and other things going on in my life too. But it's still exciting to check in and see how the progress is going.
Next question.
Kenny Hampton, Greenville, Illinois. Regarding live digital events, would you use a motorized camera slider, maybe on automatic, to provide visual interest?
Courtney?
Depends on the event. If it's a musical event with a live band or something on stage, yes, you might. I would never put it on automatic because you need to have it motivated on automatic. It starts to look like a security camera panning back and forth or sliding back and forth. It needs to be manned, and the move needs to go somewhere, to start on one person, come around, reveal somebody else, maybe throw focus to that other person. And automated, you're not going to be able to automate that to any degree of success. If it's a panel or something where people are just standing and talking or sitting and talking on the stage, I would stay away from a slider. People like to think that it adds visual interest, but I think it just disorients the audience. And on a live stream, it's going to reduce your bandwidth because it's going to require a lot more compression because the background's constantly moving, the foreground's moving. So it's just annoying. I'm annoyed by it. So it may not be everybody's point of view, but if your people are stationary or it's a play, a dramatic situation, I would either have it manned to do your moves and do them with purpose, or not use them at all.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I think that again, when we talk about digital events, I don't think I would use them if there's nobody out in the audience. If we're just doing pure people talking to the rest of the world, for audience shots, we've used them a lot. And sometimes they're manned, sometimes they're motorized. Usually we put them past the first section of people. We put the stage in focus, and oftentimes we do set them on an auto back and forth. And what we're getting is, we just get this movement of the stage with usually heads that are kind of out of focus in the foreground a little bit. And it gives, the concept is that it gives you the sense that you're like in the audience. I don't know, in the audience sliding on a roller chair. Anyway, but they're very popular with clients, and we've definitely had them specifically requested. And I think that they look fine for that kind of show. I kind of lean in with Courtney in the sense that I prefer things to be more focused in general, not just with this. But once we're in the audience, it is one of the kind of the value things, production value things that we're asked to bring in, along with jibs and dollies and all kinds of other stuff.
And Bill?
I agree with all that 100%. The one thing that I found that they can be useful for is if you have a fixed shot and you've got something like a band on stage. I've been in the situation a lot where camera 3 that is supposed to be shooting the drummer or whatever is blocked temporarily by the lead singer who's planted himself in a weird place. And I just would say to myself, if I could just move a foot to the right, I could clear that shot and make it useful again. So if you have control over a slider or something like that, to be able to change a shot. Now that's different than using it for the aesthetics of I want to change my angle of view as I'm going there. The other thing, though, that bothers me always, if you're in any kind of a live circumstance, is that it takes 2 tripods and you have to balance it and get it on a track. If you're not in a fixed setting and you're bringing it in, it is a good little bit of rigging to get it balanced correctly, and it adds to the equipment load. Sometimes that's important, sometimes it's not.
Next question.
Stefan Würzburg, Stefan out of Würzburg, Germany, says, today I first realized noise on a still photograph on a website. The noise seems to move when I look at the picture. What causes this? And he's got a link there.
Jeffrey?
So I've been going down the fun rabbit hole on this one. I'm going to show you the page really quick. So you should be able to see the actual movement of here. Maybe not, but what it is doing, it's like a little snow effect that's happening there. This is the original photo that's coming from there. And as you can see, it's pretty clear as day. So I've been trying to figure out how they're doing it, but it looks like it's an effect that they've overlaid on the photo, because if you look at the page, none of the other images, just that title image does that. So, and of course you go to the next page, the same thing happens. So this is an effect, and this is a Squarespace site. So you could probably check in with Squarespace and see what types of effects that they offer.
Bill?
I'm not saying it is this because I didn't have time to look at it, but we'd also see raster mapping anomalies where if you take a photograph at one resolution and map it to whatever the raster is that's coming out of that, sometimes those individual pixels, dark and light, fall between adjacent pixels, and the software can, particularly in interlaced, kind of cause a vibration kind of thing that causes small detail to move around. It's one of the things I look for when I'm judging whether something is good to put on the web or not.
And Noah.
I'm wondering if you could check the log on the website to see if it's an actual image or if it's a video, because it could be a moving picture that has that effect built into it. But I think Jeffrey Powers is onto it too, with maybe an overlay within Squarespace.
It is an image, by the way.
Next question.
Walt Plummer in Lewis, Delaware says, following tornadoes in my area over the weekend, I'm exploring use of Zoom to get announcers on the air from home. Can Zoom reoccurring meetings use co-hosts to start the meeting?
Alex?
Yes, you can. So the answer is yes. You can set a recurring meeting and have co-hosts, or you can set them as I don't know if it's co-host, but you set them as the ability to be another meeting owner, and you should see that at the bottom of your meeting settings, and that will allow other people to launch your meeting for you.
Next question.
Ken English in Buffalo, New York says, does anyone have thoughts or suggestions on how to set up an overhead shot, for example, to assemble electronics? Would you use 2 cameras, zoom, and a wide, or 1?
Noah?
Well, if you got the equipment, you might as well go for a wide, a close-up of the gear, a close-up of your face, get all those shots in there. The more the merrier, the more you do multicam stuff. So it would also be helpful to have some sort of multi-view. If you have an ATEM ISO, that would be perfect. You feed all those into your ATEM, and then you can see the multi-view. But as far as the rigging goes, a C-stand with a boom arm, like a 40-inch, would be super helpful, and then some sort of grip with a cord 20 for each camera. But I would not suggest having the camera connected directly to your desk unless that desk is super heavy duty and it's not going to move, because even those little micro jitters will show up on camera as your desk shakes.
Alexander?
Post a link to this in the chat, but Elgato makes a really cool multi-mount. I think it's called a flex arm, which is great because you can have it completely reach overhead like this, basically, have your camera there. This is where cameras with good autofocus really help out, because I've seen podcasts where people do stuff when they're demonstrating a product and they have to reach for the camera lens and they're adjusting focus and adjusting the focal length in real time. You might not want to have to do that. So if you can get something with good autofocus like a Sony camera, that really helps.
Go ahead, John.
As a frame of reference, there's 2 great channels on YouTube. They're electronics repair, but they both use microscopes that zoom into the electronics boards. One is Louis Rossman, and the other one is Northridge Fix.
And Alex?
Yeah, one thing to think about also is what you're seeing so that you don't get disoriented. So if you're really trying to show something, one of the things that you'll deal with is that you're trying to look at something, and let's see if I can get to this here. I just hit the wrong button. You want to monitor. Now I'm going to show you something that you probably don't need to do. But I think that it is gives you a sense of the angle of what you're trying to do here. Let me pull this up here real quick. And the main thing that we did here, and this is quite some time ago, sorry, I'm discombobulated here. So here you go. So this is an overhead shot, and what we were doing is how to get set up. How to do this was a science experiment for K through 12 many years ago. And so what you're seeing is that what we did is we had the overhead shot here, but we made sure that there was a monitor that was in front of our subject. And the reason we did that, of course, is so that the subject got a sense of their own hands. And what they did is they got used to actually looking at the monitor instead of looking down. So they're able to look at the monitor, and what that does is if you put another camera over top of that, they're looking up the whole time. And so when you cut to them, they're still looking up and they're looking at a monitor there. In fact, you can put it on a teleprompter. We didn't do it here, but it lets them have the same orientation with their hands to make that actually work. Now, I will say that a jib works exceptionally well for this, but a lot of times what we've done is hung PTZs over people's shoulders and even taken that camera and put it right over their shoulder. So you really get kind of a POV of their hands going down and working on something. And we found that to be a really effective way to do a lot of the training that we've done in the past.
And Jeffrey.
So, and this is the best part about how I have this studio set up is I can actually show you my actual studio. Let me show you this. So this is the main frontal view of my studio. I then have, this is the over the shoulder view. So if we go back to this, you'll see a PTZ camera right above that TV monitor. That's the shot that it's going. And then I have this overhead view, which is a straight down view from the ceiling. Everything, like I said, is PTZ, so I can sit there and I can switch it around. That's the camera that is doing the overhead view. If you notice, I have a fabric light right above it, which I can control the brightness, so I can give it a great shot or a little shot. I find that by doing these multi-views with the PTZ camera, you're gonna be doing something like unboxing, and you'll, like, for instance, I did a cooler about a week ago, and I wanted to show on the side, but the cooler was so big, that overhead shot, it was just covering the whole overhead shot. So instead of trying to tip and tilt the cooler, I just used the other shot, the over the shoulder shot, to get to where I wanted to show. Same thing on the front there. I could actually zoom in on that through the main shot, so you could see the table right there. And so now I have 3 different shots of the exact same area. So if you need to see anything, you have the best view possible.
Next question.
Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois says, for those who wear eyeglasses while on camera, is there a preferred glare coating to diminish reflections? I've found that even the expensive coatings create blue marks of reflection when on camera.
Alex?
Angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. And so you just really have to, the most effective way to handle your reflections on glasses is to pay attention to what angle the camera is. And then and sometimes what you can do is take a small light and you can move it up and down until you see where that is, what is it actually reflecting off of, and then figure that out. But the camera going towards the is bouncing off your lenses and going to somewhere, don't put a light there. I mean, I know that sounds, there's a lot of coatings, there's a lot of things that you can try to filter out. We've tried, we've tried polarizing filters, but it makes the skin look weird. So we've done a lot of different things that can do it. But the best way to do it is just not to put the light where it's going to reflect. It's actually not a very large space to put it in that you have to skip over.
Courtney?
Yeah, what Alex said. Don't use a ring light surrounding your lens because you'll never get that out and you'll look like a raccoon. You can use polarizing filters. Here's one here. But as Alex said, it also eliminates reflections off your skin. So you tend to look under the first layer of skin and your skin looks a little bit more saturated look. And so you rotate this until the reflection gets out. But the easiest way is put your lights that are above the camera at a 45-degree angle up above the horizontal line from your eyeballs to the camera, and it should stay out of the reflection in your glasses. The other thing you can do is tilt your glasses down some. Well, that changes the angle of reflection, so that if you tilt them down, if you're seeing reflections, just tilt them down slightly, raise the earpieces up a little bit over the back of your ears, and that may eliminate some of the reflection.
And Bill?
To Courtney's last point, I have many times had a problem with glasses reflections and just taken a tiny bit of gaff tape and wrapped it around those stems right where they hit on the top of the ears. And sometimes just raising them 1/8 of an inch is plenty to take care of the problem. So don't look for complicated solutions when sometimes really easy ones show up.
Next question.
Next question comes from Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Charlotte, North Carolina. What are broadcasters today typically using to bring in remotes from places like Ukraine, Live View, Zoom, satellite?
Go ahead, Alex.
I think it's a little bit of both. Or a little bit of all of them. I don't think that there's a lot of live views that are being used there just because of the cellular coverage isn't probably sufficient there. Zoom is being used with Starlink. So Starlink has been extremely important inside of Ukraine as far as transmission of video out of Ukraine. And it's been Starlink in a mixture of some pretty complex AWS routing to make most of those transmissions work. And then, of course, for the broadcast, and that's for the government of Ukraine as well as a lot of things from the field. And then for broadcasters, typically it's going to be satellite. So until we get to a point where people start shooting satellites down, they are a really easy way to get a video signal up and down almost anywhere in the world. And so this would, typically a satellite truck, or you can even have a small satellite fly pack. So you can put those in, especially when if it's not raining or other things. There's what we call KA and KU KA and KU packs. The KU packs are typically a couple meters wide. They kind of open up, and the KA packs are much smaller. You can get a dish that's as small as 2 or 3 feet, but those are going to be more susceptible to clouds and fog. So those are things to kind of consider there.
And Noah.
Alex definitely has a more complete answer, but I will say I did do a project about a year ago with a corporate client, and they had an office in the Ukraine, and so they had a guest who joined us. We were able to use the internet for the building, the existing infrastructure, but as soon as we finished streaming, it basically cut out. But I just remember, and I wanted to tell that story because it was a very memorable moment of like being in the middle of, the chaos and everything going on, and still being able to have a two-way conversation from around the world between the CEO and their team in the Ukraine. So it was just amazing thing what technology can do to help connect us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, producers, for your questions. And now, as we make this transition into our second hour, we have with us today product specialist Kevin O'Connell from Descript. Kevin, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Hello, Liberty. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we are so geeked. The questions have already piled up from our community with regards to Descript. This is now like an all-in-one tool. You can create captions, transcriptions. There's AI elements to it. Like it is almost all things editing. Can you lay the groundwork for us of the beginning stages of Descript where you are now? And I know that you also have a tutorial or a demo for our team. So I just want to let you have at it so we can have as much time with you as possible.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Descript is an audio and video editor. It is transcription text-based. So you're importing media, getting text transcriptions, and editing the text to edit the underlying audio and video. As you said, Liberty, there's many AI tools and features built in. Our methodology and ideology around implementing those is the power of AI, but having it live a little bit beneath the surface. So you are not maybe distracted by the aspect of AI working with you and for you. It's really in the fabric of the tool, and it makes editing, collaborating, just producing your content really seamless and powerful. Yeah.
And there are so many different ways that just not only watching your tutorials, but during office hours, many of us are talking about how we're using Descript for social media and how we're using it for video on demand and just creating captions. What's the demo if you want to get started there and just walking our community through for those who are watching who may have not used it yet?
Sure. First, I'll kind of show the bare bones power of Descript, bringing in some media, getting that text transcription, and being able to edit the text to edit the underlying audio or video. And then we can kind of break out from there. There's so many ways to use Descript, whether you're a podcast team around the world or a news station or an indie creator making TikTok videos, whatever it might be. Working in the tool is pretty seamless and easy. So let me just do that in kind of 3 quick steps.
Awesome.
Create a new project.
Yeah, that and the beauty of it too is there's some YouTubers that I've been watching some of how I didn't even recognize because we use it mainly just for the editing, the social aspect, but even the screen recording features like while you're in the midst of it. So looking forward to the setup here.
Cool. Yeah, there's kind of 3 ways to start. It's either importing and transcribing media, recording your screen, mic, camera, or any combination of those, including computer audio, or starting to write. So if you're working in something more scripted or narrative type show, starting to write and script out and collaborate, and then bringing in tape is a pretty common workflow too. So I'm going to pull in 2 files from an interview here between Jay and JP, and you simply drag and drop your files in. You'll add some nice speaker labels so they're labeled out for you when the transcript pops up. So I'll label J for Jay and JP for him. And this will transcribe for us. And you'll see this start to populate as we go. But like many DAWs and NLEs, we have a timeline here, non-destructive editing the timeline for more precision editing. Under the hood, we have the ability to edit in a multi-track fashion. So you can still see individual tracks laid out that we just dropped in. But we simplified editing to give us a linear timeline and script. So it's all editing in parallel. So here's what Descript looks like and sounds like.
Descript. Jay, welcome to the show.
Hey, JP. JP, can we ask you to repeat that? It looks like there was a countdown for the recording. So we missed.
Okay, so the classic premature starting to record before ready or starting to talk before recording is initiated. Seeing the script here, you can find the actual start of the interview, which is right here. You're listening to AI in Action.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine.
And simply editing, so deleting the text, will remove that section of the audio. And now our interview starts here.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine.
So and I don't want it to be lost on our community that like it was the text that is driving the edit more so than us actually looking at the timeline and cutting from there.
Exactly. Yeah. It depends on what I'm working on, but typical podcast production, I'm doing 75, 80% of my editing using the text. So cutting, copying, pasting to rearrange sections, deleting stuff I don't want, or using our strike through ignore feature to do the same thing. That's really powerful because you can strike stuff out, see the edits that you've made and bring them back.
That's our pleasure. Jay, let's start with yourself.
You can bring back edits, see what you've made. You can remove filler words really quickly, a couple clicks, the same process. And you can see those edits that you've made in the script as well. So every time there's a filler word.
Absolutely. I'm happy to.
You can decide to bring those back if you want it to be a little bit more natural. It's really very intuitive, super easy to use for anybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. I see Sky in the comments saying, wow. So that if there are people on your team that may not necessarily have that editing background, they are still able to contribute to a project because I think in some of the Descript language, it's like, hey, if you're familiar with a doc, like a Google Doc, you know how to edit that. You can edit in Descript.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of teams is teams like over at HBO or NBC, Vice, wherever, they're able to bring on producers that don't have an audio or video background to be part of the production process and to use their skills and experience to get media and projects that they would never have had the opportunity to work on otherwise, and still have the power of exporting all this to Premiere or to Pro Tools, Audition, and continuing your workflow in any of those programs non-destructively as well. So you'll export all of your edits and all of your raw media and populate those timelines and be able to continue on for the engineers and post-production producers out there.
And where would someone go from here? So they're editing this component. What's the next phase?
Yeah, a lot of times collaboration early on is a big part of it. So I have my drive here, just like a Dropbox or Google Drive set up with a bunch of members. And as I'm working, maybe I'm the associate producer. I'm just going through and doing a rough cut, rough edit. I might be dropping in comments, just like in a doc, and tagging some folks on my team. And maybe Jack's our fact checker. So I'll be fact checking sections, dropping in those comments there. I might have a freelancer that I'm working with only on this specific episode. I might go and add them through an email invite to either edit or comment only. But we'll go through, collaborate, work together, get this sounding in a pretty decent state, basically all of the media and all of the content where we want it to be, making sure our edits are going to be sound when we get out to, in this case, I'll probably be sending this out to Pro Tools. And from there, we would do a non-destructive export of our timeline. And we'll include all of our files and send this out and do a session data import into Pro Tools, and then do all of our sound design, mixing, mastering from there.
Awesome. And now this can also be used in collaboration with other tools that people may use. It's not necessarily something that's going to replace those that have with legacy platforms. But how does that workflow? How are you seeing people using that workflow?
Yeah. Well, first we're seeing folks use Descript end to end for a lot of media. So they'll do all of their editing, mixing, sound design in Descript, drop out an audio or video file, and they're either publishing that to one of our integrated partners here to go straight to these platforms, or just exporting a file. But for teams that are using legacy software, or just like myself, I prefer mixing, mastering Pro Tools. We'll get everybody together. This is where we stay as long as we possibly can and get a content lock. So we'll do a lot of research. We'll maybe be recording straight in if we're going to bring in some archival footage or archival audio using our built-in recorder. You can record computer sound, and we'll just get everything assembled here. We'll start to write. Also, we can go into write mode and just start scripting right here like a doc. Same thing. Get everything in place. Sometimes our hosts will come in and do some scratch recording, or we'll have this read back with an AI voice, which I'll show you in a little bit, which are available for free in Descript, or you can also create your own synthetic version of your voice. And then we'll get everything really just in a solid place before we're ready to export out. So basically everything is where we want it to be. It's probably like a 90% finish for the edit, and then we'll go out to Pro Tools, Audition, Premiere, wherever we're going.
Awesome. And I know that we have some of the panelists have some questions. So we'll go to Courtney, get a couple of questions, because I do want to make sure we have time for our producers' questions. There are a lot of them. Courtney?
Yeah, one question I had in the example you just showed with Jay and JP, you brought in two separate WAV files. If that was a double ender, in other words, each was recording on their own in their different locations, and they sent you the WAV file, their locally recorded WAV files, how do you synchronize those two so that they both start at the same time? Is it you use time code? Do you have to line them up and start them at the same time? How is that handled?
Great question. That is, most of the pro podcast studios that we're working with are doing that work. For folks that don't know, it's in the industry called a tape sync, where you're recording two ends of an interview in two different locations with some kind of call in between. Typically these days it's a Zoom call or a phone call. And we kind of reverse engineer that process if you need to do some syncing. So what we do, instead of dragging and dropping those two already synced files into an empty doc, we create what's called a sequence, which is that multi-track view I showed at the beginning. And we'll just bring those files in one at a time. So let's say these two are not synced. You can drag them and drop them individually, transcribe, add speaker labels the same way.
Wow.
And then you would also bring in the recording of that call, sync these two files to the recording of that call, so they're the same start and end point, same length, when one person's speaking, the other person's not, kind of thing. And then delete the track that has that Zoom call or whatever call on it, and then create a doc. We call them compositions. We'll create a doc from this multi-track sequence, so this pairing, and then we'll have the exact same thing that we saw before, a nice laid out transcription and timeline, just like this. So these can all be synced and moved around, so you can get them how you need them to be. Say they're synced.
Yeah, and it's great where you see the actual words below the waveforms. That's really handy.
Yeah, so helpful here, both in the sequence view and also in the timeline. So when we're editing the actual conversation, the interview itself, we have all these word tabs in the timeline. So you can follow along as you're going if you're someone who prefers, editing with waveform view. This can be edited. You can adjust your pacing and timing here in the timeline. So pulling to the left will obviously remove some space, and pulling to the right will give us AI generated room tone, so that when we get out to Pro Tools, in this case, we would have a piece of room tone for each track. We're analyzing their mic signal, their background noise, and it's really accurate and helpful when we're getting out there.
Bill?
You've been mentioning the integration with Adobe products. How does it work with other things like Final Cut and Resolve?
Yeah, great question. We don't have integration with Resolve, an export integration with Resolve at the moment, but you can non-destructively export to Pro Tools in Logic, Audition, Reaper, Final Cut, and Premiere. So the most common workflow for this is just using Descript as a tape wrangler and editor for audio and video, getting all of your edits in place using the power of transcript-based editing, and then exporting out there and doing all of your sound design, effects, animation, color correction, anything like that.
Well, that's awesome. And did you want to go through one more? And I know that, so you've just shown us sequences, and scenes are something that have been game changing for a lot of people, and just being able to move elements around. If you want to show us that, and then we'll get into our questions.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll do the same quick process. We'll bring in a video file so we can show some scenes. Scenes are, it'll make sense in a second, but scenes are our way of sectioning up and reorganizing a video to change layout or change visuals or anything like that. So here's just a single video file. Same works for video as audio as if you're doing an interview and you're bringing in two separate video files. We can go through that same process. In this case, it's just a single MP4 audio attached single file. They're from our friends at Chili Piper, if anybody knows that team. So what else is going on? This will be done in a sec. Scenes are kind of our integration of the concept of slides. So creating a scene is the equivalent of creating a slide in PowerPoint or Google Slides, except we're starting with our script material, our transcript, our audio, or kind of our foundation. And creating a scene separates a section of our video so that we can change the layout or change visuals and templatize that layout if we want to, or control them altogether, kind of like a group format. And really just edit a section of a video separate from the rest, which is really nice. So anytime you want to change the layout or change visuals of a section, you create a new scene by either clicking the slash button or just using slash on your keyboard. Click slash command. I like to select a section of the script and press slash, and that'll give me two new scenes, one that continues on for the rest. And then here, so if I wanted to create a zoom in on this second section that I just created right here, just part of the game in that phrase.
Being reactive is unfortunately just part of the game. So I think
I could select that scene that I just made, change my zoom, rearrange that however I'd like. And now I have...
Being reactive is unfortunately just part of the game. So I think there's
And I can start to add visuals that way if I want to add some captions in on that section too. They all follow the transcript.
Reactive is unfortunately just part of the game. So
and I can rearrange these exactly how I want to and get them looking how I want, whether it's branded font or branded colors, any kind of stylistic approach that I might want to take with captioning.
That is That is wonderful. Especially and I guess a quick last question of like, who are some of the people that you see using this outside of necessarily creators? You remembered, like you mentioned, like associate producers, who are some of the people that you see that are like getting really great value out of Descript?
Yeah. Not to mention, just the independent folks that want to create video and audio content these days. But a lot of marketers, a lot of communicators at companies. So people that make screen recordings or product demos or video messaging. So the equivalent of Loom, but the ability to edit it and make it really high production value. Anyone that's doing presentations. I've been doing tons of work with students lately too in video programs, audio programs, journalists, training programs that are working in multimedia now that, just doing one form of media typically isn't their curriculum. And our media producers that are out there, whatever kind of content that you're creating, whether it's for your website or for your company, if you're in broadcast, there's a lot of use cases for Descript these days.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this demo. And producers, this is your chance. You've just seen Descript in action. So go ahead and submit your questions. And also remember, voting is going to be very important today because we have a plethora of questions, and those that are upvoted will be the ones that will get through the quickest. All right, Bill, let's get into this.
Okay, the first one comes from John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. Do you have any plans that could be used by educators? I teach at a college, and a simple plan to help students learn to use Descript would be very helpful.
Yes, we have that currently. If you go to our website, we have an EDU page, education page, and we have discounted education plans and drives, both for nonprofit and education. And we also offer free training for schools, classes, anything like that. And I would join your class and we would do something similar to this.
Kevin, I think you're still screen sharing. I don't know if you want to be on camera for this.
I'm happy to. Sure.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia. Descript is great for remote collaboration when editing. What is the best workflow for remote audio recording in real time?
Great question. We don't, I'll say, yet have a remote recording solution built in, but we have integrations with our friends at Squadcast and Riverside, those two remote recording solutions, and you can port your files from their cloud right over to ours, never have to download any files. And so you finish up a recording, finish up an interview, click edit in Descript, and it will drop those files from their cloud to ours, and you can start editing quickly just like that.
Next question.
Nice. Jonas Dattel in Stuttgart, Germany is up next. He says, is there an API one can use to upload videos directly into Descript?
We have a Zapier integration as well. So if you have a folder, drive, server set up, you can create a destination project in Descript or drive in Descript, and then a source folder. So you can, as you drag or save video and audio into that folder, Zapier will set it up for you.
Awesome. Next question.
Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach says, for those of us working from pre-written scripts, can we start a new project by first uploading the script, then display the script like a teleprompter while recording, and then have the transcription compare the recording to the script?
Ooh, great question. The last part, not yet. We're working on a version 2 of what we call replace script track. So the first portion of your workflow, yes, you can copy and paste text from anywhere on your computer directly into Descript in write mode that I showed you. And you can record using that as a teleprompter, look at the script as you're going. It also live transcribe for you. So you'll see your transcription show up as you're recording, edit it as you're going to, if you want to do multiple takes, whichever. And then the V2 of replace transcript, replace script track will be you taking your recording, copying it or cutting it and pasting it onto your script, and it will correct the transcript from your original narration scripting that you did, do any alignment that needs to happen, but basically replace your script with your recorded media. But that's coming soon.
Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. Descript can be super powerful in professional video workflows where you can easily export back to Premiere and Final Cut. I think your training videos and marketing should do more to emphasize that. So it's a comment more than a question.
Thanks for the feedback. I'll pass it along.
Next question.
Jeff Cohen, Miami Beach, Florida. Jeff says, any future plans to support the use of third-party plugins for audio processing?
No distinct plans, but it's common feedback. It's feedback that I shared when I started the company. So please go and vote on that feature request at feedback.descript.com and share it with folks in your network to also vote on it.
Next question.
Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia. Will Descript allow more advanced emoting by its overdub voices in the future? Some other AI apps allow you to tweak words or even phonemes to get the right emphasis.
Yes, we're going to be building on that. We currently have styles built in. For those that don't know, Overdub is our text-to-speech generator. So whether you're using a stock voice that comes free with Descript, or creating a synthetic AI voice of yourself, you can also create styles based on the audio that you've used to train that model. So we currently have that, and we are constantly iterating on it as well. And we have some really exciting updates to our Overdub feature coming in the next quarter.
Alex?
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you build a voice, how you build, like you want your own voice to be able to use for overdubbing? What's the process in making that actually happen?
Yeah. Liberty's okay if I
was going to say, I was like, we just started questions. I know there's an Overdub demo. So yes, definitely go ahead.
All right. Sounds great. So great question. Overdub, like I've mentioned, is our synthetic AI voice creation tool, text-to-speech tool. And it's two parts. One is creating a voice, which I'll show you in a second, but I'll start with using a voice, whether it's a stock voice or your own. So I can start writing and show that in Descript. I can write script right in, and by assigning a speaker label, I can have this labeled out. So it's just a speaker label, right? I could just say Kevin and it's labeled for me. But what I can also do is use an AI voice that I have here. So we have stock voices. There's a bunch here and they'll generate for you. You can audition them.
Life is like a camera. Just focus on what's important.
Life is like a camera.
Bunch of great options there. Those are free and for you to use however you like in anything you produce. But I also have some voices that I've created for myself, some voices that colleagues have shared with me, which is incredibly powerful. So there's one model here is just using text-to-speech, writing script, generating audio using a voice here. And I have one for basically every mic I own. In every different environment. And within each voice that I've created, I've also created styles. And I'll show you that process real quick in a second too. I have a bunch of different options for styles that will give me different output depending on what I'm looking for. A lot of times I'm producing content that's very instructional, a little bit more monotone, serious, less playful. And I have those there. I also have some excited, happy versions. And it's really helpful to be able to generate this. Additionally, if I've recorded directly into Descript, I'll use my microphone here. I'll drop in my speaker label and I'll transcribe that. I can record directly into a project as well. All right, here we go. Thanks for having me, Office Hours. Really awesome being here today, and I will see you next time. Those transcribe for me real quick. All right, here we go. Thanks for having me. I can edit that text. Thanks for having me, Office Hours. Really awesome being here today, and I will see you next time. And you can make corrections and edits as well. So if you're working through here and you want to make any kind of correction to what you've made, you've recorded, you can do so using this feature as well. So the first one is, here's my text-to-speech model that I used. Thanks so much for having me, Office Hours. Very regal sounding. And here, thanks for having me, Office Hours. Really awesome being here today. I can make corrections using this overdub. This will generate the same way, but I can create a little bit more transparent edits within my audio that I've recorded as well. So it's not just starting with script and generating 100% synthetic audio from script. It's being able to make little corrections, keep things evergreen, everything like that. So this is, I'll play this when this is done processing. This is the process of using our overdub feature. Creating your voice is really just taking any audio or video that you have recorded, whether it's in Descript or you could just record your own script. We have a training model back at our drive view, and you can just copy and paste text from existing recordings that you have in Descript, or you can pull in files from your computer, or you can just press record in that training spot and record a script. We give you a David Attenborough script that you can read through.
And yeah, that's very helpful. And just again, pulling in just some of the the chat community, even saying like Sky mentioned, I can see this used by a volunteer that is not an editor, but can access this tool without all of the heavy iron editing tools. So having people on the team to be able to work through this as well.
That's right. A lot of times teams that are working with a host or working with talent, they'll work into their contract the ability to make corrections, or even just, they want to get a script together and be able to sit around for a table read and not have anyone actually read scripts. Using this is really helpful. Let's give this a listen. I might need to do some finessing, but we'll see. Thanks for having me, Office Hours. It was really great being here today, and I will see you next time. Really pretty okay. I could make some edits though and get this sounding a little bit better.
So some of that cleaning up, like just the sound there, can be done in Descript is what you're saying.
That's right. That's right. Office Hours. It was really great being here.
And is it able to match the resonance? I mean, so what I hear right now is less of an issue, but more of a change in the the overall environmental sound.
Yeah. Well, this is my raw recorded audio, so I might be doing some mixing, using our voice enhanced tool called Studio Sound. I've also would probably want to match the microphone. I just got this microphone yesterday, so I haven't created a voice with this mic. But this is from my Shure 87C, so it's close, but it's not exactly there. So there's some manual work that I would do. There's perhaps some mixing that I would do if I wanted to match resonance. I might throw an EQ really quick and adjust any resonance that I need to, or I might just be saving that for Pro Tools when I'm mixing. So yeah, I have a varied number of decisions to make. But once I have my voice for this mic, maybe I'll come back on and I'll show you that, and it'll be perfect.
Would love that. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Mickey Makachor in the Philippines. How does Descript deliver to Pro Tools? Is exporting an AAF, EDL, or XML possible? And does it maintain broadcast wave metadata such as timecode, roll, take scene, and channel name?
Great questions. We export as an AAF. So you get a packaged up AAF and then do a session data import into Pro Tools. It'll keep all of your raw files in the original state, sample rate, bit depth. We don't, Pro Tool time code is funny in Pro Tools. There's no metadata attached when you're exporting from the AAF, which is a limitation of AAF with our AF service that we use. But it is all non-destructive, so you're pulling back edits in your tape and your timeline and Pro Tools, and all of that is there. So you'll basically get an edited, assembled piece that you've made in Descript, just like if you started it in Pro Tools. Raw cuts, no fades, all of your audio in its original state, but with those edits that you've made.
Next question.
Tom Tatum in Washington, D.C. Can you scrub on the timeline?
Certainly. Yeah. I guess I should keep my screen share up really quick, huh? So thanks. Scrubbing Office During playback is here. You may or may not be able to hear it in here today. And it's cutting out a little bit. For exists there. Seems a little bit jumpy right now. So maybe I might have just discovered a bug live.
And then with that scrubbing across the timeline, if you were to move, like you're also able to move some sections and that would then also move the captions or I guess the text around as well, correct?
Certainly. Every manipulation that you're doing to the text will also do to the underlying audio video and also captions that are going to be attached to this transcript as well.
Kevin, do you have quick, simple things like 2x if you have a lot of stuff to get through?
Yep.
Good.
We have customized playback speed, so you can have whatever playback speed you'd like.
Understood. Next question comes from Ken English in Buffalo, New York. What if Descript's transcription doesn't recognize a word, for example, a specialized medical term? Can the transcribed word be updated so that the transcriptions in the future would be accurate?
Great question. So you can make corrections in the script really easily. So if this needs to read as newsjacking, you can make that correction just to the text. Just like that, you highlight a word and click correct. We also have this thing called a transcription glossary, where I put in a lot of common proper nouns or acronyms or industry-specific terms, and Descript will keep an eye and an ear out for those and get them right.
Next question.
Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida says, are AI de-essing and plosive correction features coming to Descript? You already have extremely impressive audio tools like studio sound, audio leveling, volume automation, and more. These would be big time savers, and yes, better to avoid first.
Big time savers and big time savers. Yes, certainly. We have a lot more audio repair plugins coming out, effects coming out pretty soon this year.
Next question.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California says, can you listen to the edit timeline in 2x or 1.5x? I think I jumped his question.
The excitement.
Three dot menu here, this hamburger menu down there.
Yeah, all the way to 3x. Next question.
Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois says, amazing. Can Descript identify all of the ums and ahs and then remove those globally?
That's right. So I showed that earlier in the beginning. I can go back. Let me just create a new. This stars menu here, which I've been calling the magic menu. This is where you can shorten word gaps, moments of silence. It'll shorten those to whatever destination length you want. So any gap over a certain target will shorten that. And also remove filler words. Any of these or any combination of these, including repeated words. And you can choose to flat out delete them or use that strikeout feature to be able to see those edits in your script. You can also search for phrases using the search function here.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Craig McFarlane in Boston, Massachusetts. How do you avoid odd cuts or jittery video when trimming based on text?
Yeah, it's a great question. The common misconception is that Descript edits for you, which is not the case. It just makes editing a bit easier and more enjoyable. So you still have to call upon your skills and experience as an editor to make sound cuts and cuts that work well in your media. But using things like scenes to add in B-roll, perhaps from our stock media library or an image, great way to cover up the jump cut. Jump cuts are also in completely in a lot of media, so embracing the jump cut is big. But using Zoom, stock media, video, GIFs, images to cover up edits, or also just using the timeline to kind of finesse your edits as well can be really helpful. So we offer things like scene transitions that are just like transitions between slides in a PowerPoint Google slide. You can transition in or out between scenes, and you can also add edit point transitions, whether it's crossfade, cross blur, and that's just between an edit point audio and video in your timeline. So a lot of options.
And speaking of editing, can we take a moment to even look at the graphics part of things that you mentioned, like even the design elements, even how some people are using it from a social perspective, because there are templates. I was yesterday years old when I was like, templates, we've been designing all of our own graphics. So if we could talk through that, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have this templates gallery up here where you can templatize your own scenes. So I have a bunch of really great templates that I use all the time. Here's one for this video from Chili Piper. And so you can drop in templates, match orientation, or change the orientation of your video if you want. It brings in all of your visual elements that you've saved, really great and easy. And we also have a bunch of free templates in our templates gallery here, whether it's caption style or a specific slide type, multicam templates. There's so much in here. And this is all free to use in Descript.
And how would, if someone wanted to like create their own design, not templates based, like we're starting from scratch, what would that look like?
Certainly. So here's our from scratch video, completely unedited, right? We just brought it in. We might want to add some visual elements or change the orientation of the video. I'll do that real quick. Kind of get this looking how I want. Maybe we'll add some captions in. Cool. And perhaps we'll drop a background as well.
For those watching, you can see the very TikTok-ish and Reels styles and shorts taking place in real time here at Office Hours.
So this background, and here's what we got now.
Reactive is unfortunately just part of the game. So I think there's like some percentage of all of our days.
Cool. So this is okay. So these three visual elements I just added, or changed. I changed the orientation. I added that background. And I dropped in some captions that are going to follow in the script. What I can do is right-click this and save it to a template and go through the process to save this template and publish it real quick. And then after I do that, it will be available in the My Templates gallery that I can start to use on any project I work on. Same for the rest of my team as well. So I can drop in and save templates there, and they'll be accessible to my whole team. So great way to save branded material, branded content, settings for consistency, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Next question.
Comes from Brian Enright. He says, does it work best on PC or Mac?
Both. Yeah. Same functionality on both PC and Mac.
Next question.
Alexander Knight, Vancouver, British Columbia, wonders if there is a dark mode for the app.
Oh, yes, certainly. Go into your app settings and follow your system, or just change to dark.
Nice.
Next question.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California, here on the panel. Can the timeline be imported back into an NLE like Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, and so forth?
Yeah, Premiere and Final Cut are our NLE export options here. Going to export, timeline, Premiere, Final Cut.
And bring that right in, Alex.
And what's the relationship between the two? So you have those exports. Is it one way to Premiere and Final Cut, or can you bring it, have it kind of go back and forth between the two, between Descript and those NLEs?
Yeah, it's currently one way. But I could foresee a future where we create a round trip where we can work back and forth. The beauty of my workflow, at least with Pro Tools, is I can continuously do session data imports from AAF exports from Descript, so I can add to my edits as I go without replicating my audio files and whatnot. Not entirely sure of the same process in Final Cut Premiere, but yeah.
Yeah, because I can see kind of a lot of times when we're working on podcasts where we are getting the content, we get a review, and we want to edit that out before we do any work on like get all that stuff out of the way before I start working on this.
Yeah.
And so I could see it going through it. It's fine that it goes one direction, but I could see it wanting to go back and forth if there's additional edits. A lot of times our workflow is like right after a show, we put it up on Frame.io, and then people put their notes in. Now, is there a way to do that where people can put just notes into the process?
Yes. So you can do it in app. So that you can drop in some comments, or you can also mark up the script however you like with markers or inline notes, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we also create this external published page as a web link, and you can publish this. It'll give you a link for a browser, and it'll show up with script and video. So you can share this link with anyone. They can drop in comments as well. So you can get like a nice edited external version for a stakeholder or someone who's reviewing, and then be able to go back to Descript and make those edits based on the feedback.
Can they do the kind of the overdubbing there on that web page, or is that something they just say, well, I need to have this changed to this? Or
yeah, this is just like a Frame.io viewer.
Yep.
So it's just video and transcript that follows along. All overdub work needs to be in the app.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Noah.
And yeah, so that export back to Final Cut or to Premiere, that's non-destructive. So like, could you readjust the edits within the timeline in Premiere or whatever the NLE is?
100%.
Awesome.
Yep. It'll have all your edit points multi-tracked out if you had multi-track files, and non-destructively pull back or peel back edits.
Next question.
Next one comes from Sky Gleason in Seattle. I'm sorry. Yeah, here we go. What are the file types that you can export? H.264, MPEG-4, ProRes?
Great questions. So we currently are only exporting as MP4s, but resolution up to 4K, low, medium, and high quality. You can visit our help center to see additional specs on that as well. And then for audio quality, up to 48K. And we also have high rate of bit depth as well.
Next question.
Noah Sargent's back again with everyone's favorite question. How is the product priced?
Great question. We have monthly and annual pricing. You can go to descript.com/plans, and based on features, transcription hours each month, a bunch of different factors, it's anywhere from free, there's a free plan, to between $12 and $30 a month, depending if you pay monthly or annually.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Alexander Knight in Vancouver, British Columbia. Is there an API where someone with their own web-based video editor could fully integrate Descript?
Yes. Yes, we have an Overdub API currently, not for the editor just yet, but we have an Overdub API. And if you go to our website and search API, it'll pop up. There's a great way you'll get a key generated for you and get set up.
Next question.
Craig McFarlane in Boston, Massachusetts. Although a wide variety of people can use Descript, do you have a sweet spot or a target customer profile?
It's a great question. It's a bit out of my wheelhouse. I work mainly with podcasters these days. So podcast studios, big publishers, iHeart, NBC, Gimlet. But since our release of our redesign, which we've been calling Storyboard, which is what you're seeing here, is a really going after video producers, folks that are making video for their job, for social, for YouTube. The style of content is wide and varied, pretty vast. But anybody who makes audio and video content, and anybody who wants to do it really quickly, really easily, and collaboratively as well.
Next question.
Jeffrey Powers in Madison, Wisconsin. Any thoughts of a way to cache files so that work can be done offline without a third-party editor?
Good question. Our offline editing is a bit limited right now. You can certainly edit offline, but you won't have access to a lot of features like transcription. So if you have a project already set up, you can go in and do a lot of editing. The next time you have internet connection, it'll sync for you. But it is a web-based tool, so having a strong internet connection vastly improves your performance and experience.
And Kevin, I just wanted to make sure that, so we've gone through the Overdub tutorial, you've laid the groundwork, we did some graphics or just building something from scratch. Was there one more that you had? If not, we had this conversation last week on Office Hours, or just even audiograms, what that looks like, since that's a trending style and we have a lot of podcasters in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. So a really common workflow is taking a section of your text and duplicating it to a new doc or new composition. And that creates just a new version of that edit. It's in our compositions list right here, in this dropdown. And taking one of our audiogram templates here, applying it.
Our pleasure. Jay, let's start with yourself. And you have
a great starting point to get yourself a nice branded audiogram that you can edit. All of these are obviously editable in any type of way, whether it's style, color, hex RGB colors, add a background, change your company logo, whatever it might be, really quickly, just 2 clicks, just like that.
Awesome. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Noah Sargent again in Fullerton. Do you have a multi-user plan or a business plan, something like that?
Yes. So each drive is organized by the number of members. So my drive, I have a few folks that I work with, and they are all editors. So they have the ability to transcribe, import, edit, export, unrestricted. And it's the same price per editor on your drive. So you'll just, if it's $15 a month for one editor, it would be $30 a month for 2, depending on the plan. Or if you're using the creator plan, $12 a month, 24 for 2 editors. But I also have the ability to invite folks as a basic member, which is free, and they can just view, listen, and comment. So awesome for folks that don't need to import, transcribe, and edit, but need to give feedback, need to review, drop in comments, collaborate that way.
Yeah, we found that very handy for clients to just like put their comments on, or even editors or what, not editors, meaning like copy editor, change this, change that. Tremendous helpful. Next question.
Great.
Alton Christensen in New York City. On the plans, what's the difference between editors and seats, and how do they impact pricing? You may have just covered that.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Editor is a seat, but you can also have a basic seat, which is free.
Next question.
Alexander Knight, Vancouver again. How would Descript work on an older 12-core Xeon Mac Pro with an 8GB GPU and 64GB of RAM?
Pretty great. Pretty great.
that was easy.
Yeah. 64 gigs of RAM, you'll be all right. Yeah.
Next question.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, right back with, could this handle a 45-minute news show with B-roll and graphics throughout?
Certainly. Yeah. A lot of the podcast teams that we're working with, or folks that are working on short film work or video work, they're pulling in several interviews that are long, multiple speakers, archival footage, B-roll footage, and building out their projects with a lot of media. So yeah, it'll handle it quite well.
Is there anything that is like that you've seen maybe stress test or too much, just following up with Noah's question? So is that like, okay, it starts around that 2-hour, 3-hour mark, why anyone would have anything that long? Maybe conference footage, but really they should break it up. But if they don't, how does Descript handle that?
Yeah, I mean, podcast teams press record often and record for 3 or 4 hours at a time. We do start to see some performance degradation with multi-track interviews that are 3 and 4 hours long. So we've been recommending to them just, press stop and record again halfway through. And also when you get a project that's, incredibly large, gigabyte wise in like the 20, 30 gig frame, you can start to see some slowing down. But in our app settings, we have the ability to optimize video files and optimize your computer storage. So we'll create proxies for you, basically, our version of proxies that will improve your editing and playback experience. And then when you go to export, it'll re-download all of your original files for whatever DAW or NLE you're going to.
Alex?
And so if I'm adding B-roll to a scene, and then does it attach it to what it's attached to there, so that if I edit something, let's say I take out some space or I cut something out earlier in the thing, does the B-roll slide with the text?
Yeah, absolutely. It all stays really, really well linked. So if I have a scene here and I drop in some B-roll, that B-roll is there. I have a bunch of layers now that are on this.
Like we all need to hop on the latest trend.
If I make any edits to my script, it'll keep everything synced.
Marketing, we all need to hop.
And that B-roll will be dropped in exactly where I had it, but I'll keep my script intact as I'm editing through.
And Noah?
Yeah, and then as far as like multicamming, I'm assuming we can do like a first pass in this program and then take it to a nonlinear editor and then switch between cameras from there.
That's right. Yeah, we have a multicam feature in here, and auto assign scenes by active speaker. So if you have 2 or more files from a multicam recording, it'll automatically full screen and change your camera angle for you if you'd like. But the workflow for most folks is doing their multicam work in their NLE.
Next question.
Alexander Knight is back again from Vancouver. Is all the processing done on the local CPU or GPU, or is there a data being sent to the cloud and back? And how much of the GPU is being taken advantage of?
It's a mix. You'd have to reach out to our engineers to get the real answer on that. But it depends on the process and the feature. Descript is both CPU intensive and cloud intensive, like internet connection as well. So things like transcription or processing studio sound, those, or generating overdub. It's a combo of your computer and your internet. But a lot of the editing and kind of zoom work or transitions that's all going to be based on your computer.
Alex?
And I'm sorry, I'm going to take you back to the last question for just a second. We usually don't do this, but I have one thing I got to know.
Yeah.
So if I have a multi-track video and I cut it and I say, just cut to the person talking all the way through,
yep,
and I export that out, is that sending that out as just raw tracks, or is that sending it out as a multicam file back to Final Cut or Premiere, that it's packaged as an actual multicam file?
It's not packed as a multicam file. It's packed. You'll have your edits in your timeline, but you won't get the multi-track information. If you stay end-to-end in Descript, you can keep, obviously, all the multi-track and multicam work you do will stay there, but not yet for those.
Because that would be pretty ninja.
Yeah, I was like looking at, so we've got layers, like we're able to move layers around.
Yeah.
Courtney?
Yeah, and I was wondering if you bring in a multi-track broadcast wave file, a poly file with, let's say, 6 channels of ISOs, each character is on a separate ISO channel on a wireless mic. Does it preserve the metadata of the character names that are in that broadcast wave file? Does it deal with the metadata in a broadcast wave file, or do we have to just go in and label it manually once you bring it in?
All metadata, file names, any data attached to the files before you come into Descript will remain attached to those files when you export out your timeline after.
But it doesn't parse the metadata necessarily, and
it doesn't.
For example, typically in broadcast wave files, a lot of production sound mixers will tag the ISO files with the name of the character in it, and that goes in the IXML chunk of the broadcast wave file or in the BEXT chunk of the broadcast wave file. So it doesn't parse those chunks, the XML or to pull out character names per channel to automatically bring it into Descript when it's creating its timeline.
Right. No, it would just be that manual process of adding the speaker label, but the file that you add will also keep file name and metadata, but it won't parse it out for you when you bring it in, unfortunately.
So it'll reattach those chunks when you export.
It will, yes.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Next question.
Ben English in Buffalo, New York is up with this. Where I work, there's a lot of concern on publishing data out to the cloud. Are the data centers in the U.S.?
Yes. Our backend is Amazon AWS.
Wonderful. Well, that is our final question for a dynamic hour with you, Kevin. Thank you so much for the demos, going back and forth. So podcasting, video editing, sound, captions, social. Any last words for our community or anything you haven't covered that we need to go check out?
Yes, you could check us out on, you join our community on Discord. And there's just a wealth of information and knowledge share and events, training that happens there. And just go to help.descript.com to get more involved in all the stuff that we're doing. Or if you have more questions, we do weekly events, also different topics and trainings you can find there. And just stay connected and reach out how we can help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. And producers, thank you for your questions. And panelists, thank you for your feedback and your insights. And our back-end team, our production crew, for without which this would not be possible. And tomorrow we're talking about super sources and how they're a key part of all live shows and broadcasts. So we'll examine some of the best examples. If you want to know more about what's happening for the rest of the week, head over to officehours.global. And let me get back to how far the Tulloch traversal. We have gone 113,446 miles. That is 182,573 kilometers. That's more than 898 million bananas and 4.6 times around the earth. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and for participating. And we'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.
Kevin, that smoke that you're smelling is our wallet's catching fire.
Yes.
Stop it. Great job, Kevin.
That was so awesome.
At the beginning of the show, it's not another subscription. At the end of the show, it's like, okay, where's my credit card? Fine, stay.
Oh, that's so many comments coming in. They are saying how a great session, brilliant tool. Thank you, Kevin. This was awesome.
That's great.
Oh, we whisper at the end of the show, so that's why this is happening. Yes.
I was whispering along too. Like, sure, I can do that.
Peer pressure, watch out.
Right.
All right, here we go.
Awesome. All right, Kevin, that's a wrap.
Take care.
Bye, y'all.